Republican Representative Lauren Boebert refusing to publicly apologize directly to Democratic Rep. Ilhan Omar for the anti-Muslim remarks she made about her. The two spoke today after that video surfaced of Boebert implying Omar could be a suicide bomber. The call didn't go well. Omar hung up on Boebert, who says she, quote, refused to publicly acknowledge her hurtful and dangerous comments and instead doubled down on her rhetoric. Boebert followed up the call with this defiant video.
Rejecting an apology and hanging up on someone is part of cancel culture 101 and a pillar of the Democrat Party. Make no mistake, I will continue to fearlessly put America first, never sympathizing with terrorists. Unfortunately, Ilhan can't say the same thing.
Are you sorry or not? And what are you sorry for? I don't know. Doesn't make much sense to me what's going on here in terms of trying to make it better. Let's discuss with Scott Jennings. What's your read?
Well, I'm not surprised about the way the call turned out. I mean, to be honest, I was surprised over the weekend when Boebert issued an initial apologetic public statement. I thought that meant, and I think I was right about this at the time, I thought it meant Kevin McCarthy had encouraged her to do that, the Republican leader, privately. She then walked it back a little bit, which, again, I was surprised. I didn't think the suggestion that these two would talk would yield any kind of positive result. I mean, look, my read on this is these are two of the 5 worst members of Congress, and the idea that they were going to have some conversation and emerge with some political enlightenment, I mean, that's a low percentage chance. Aspirational, low percentage shot, and I'm not surprised at all the way it turned out.
Is there any line of decency that your party has to hold anymore? Is it okay to say that she's part of a jihad squad and that an elevator guy came running over, that we don't even know if that happened? Omar says it didn't, and because he was afraid that she might be a terrorist, saying, well, she doesn't have a backpack on, I guess we're okay. Those are okay things to say?
No, absolutely not. The comments are absolutely reprehensible, and they come from someone who believes that's part of her job as being a congressman, to say outrageous, stupid, reprehensible things. So it's not okay. It's also, by the way, not okay for Omar to say some of the things she has said. What you have here are two people who have both said crazy things, and they've both been roundly condemned by the other side and by people in their own party. And so what is so crazy about this situation to me is you've got two people here who I don't actually think understand what the job of congressman is. They're both in it for the wrong reasons, and that incentivizes saying stupid things. So is there a line that was crossed? Absolutely. Is it a terrible thing to have done? 100%. Do I think there are people in both of these conferences that are constant headaches for their leadership? You bet. And they both happen to be involved in this, and that's why I think this phone call turned out the way it did.
There's no question Omar's gotten herself in trouble, but there is a consistent drumbeat in your party of people playing to this kind of ugliness. And the reason I say, I don't know if there's a line, I hear you, you say there is a line, I hope you're right, but nobody ever says anything about it in the party. None of the leadership. They're just quiet in these cases. And the best you'll get out of any of them is, well, I don't like when anybody says stuff like this, Republican or Democrat. Like it's got to be equal. How is that going to make anything better? Why would Boebert not keep doing this?
Well, I think that when you're in the position of leadership of a party, you have to decide what is the best way for me to try to engage, as low percentage of a game as this is, what is the best way for me to try to engage in some kind of behavior modification? Again, I think McCarthy is in a tough spot because there's a bunch of people in his conference, Boebert included. This is like part of their shtick. This is part of their existence. And I actually think they occasionally do things like this, hoping that the leadership will publicly come down on them because then it enhances the overall effect of the craziness that they were perpetrating in the first place. So what McCarthy did here was to try to work behind the scenes on, I think, a behavior modification strategy, and it initially caused some positive result.
Do you know that he did anything behind the scenes?
Rethought it, issued a tweet, which is more than I ever thought he would get. So I think he's like always in this impossible box of trying to figure out, what is the right thing to do here, knowing that there's virtually nothing you can do to stop people from doing this because that's what they went there to do in the first place, as reprehensible as it might be.
How do you know that McCarthy was working behind the scenes to get them to call and get her to apologize?
I talked to people in his orbit about it. I know that I know that that initial walk back by Boebert over the weekend, I mean, she almost immediately walked it back. I don't think she woke up the next day and thought better of it on her own. Do you? I mean, that was clearly, you know, somebody leaning on her saying, hey, you've gone way too far here. But they didn't do it publicly, they did it privately. Now, the suggestion that she call Omar, again, aspirational, but probably destined for failure, which it did. But the idea, I mean, look what happened to Gosar the other day. He didn't apologize. He didn't apologize. And so the idea that Boebert did get to some kind of an apology over the weekend told me that the leadership team was trying to figure out a better way to modify these things than they have been able to do in the past.
I mean, McCarthy says he talked to her. So, you know, you take him at his word. It's just, you know, again, he took a little slip there in my book when he had that phone conversation with the president about January 6th, and then afterwards seemed to forget it and say that it was all okay and that he hadn't done anything wrong. So, you know, I got to be careful about how I allow him to be portrayed in terms of how he's exercising his influence. I guess the concern is that the moderates are going to have to make the change on both sides of the equation here. And I don't see this on the left either, by the way. I don't see them stepping up. I've said on this show, where's Chuck Schumer? Why is everybody talking about Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema? Isn't this his job to deliver for the president or tell the president he can't? You know, so I'm not unilateral on this. But, you know, if they don't stand up, Scott, and this stuff is done sotto voce and behind the scenes, you're not going to change any of this.
Well, I think you may be over ascribing the power that any of these, in either party, congressional leaders have to tie the tongues of these members of Congress who say the things that none of us like. And I do think you just hit on something that is vitally important. Neither Boebert nor Omar represent, in my opinion, the vast majority of the people who reside in either of their parties. So you have people who exist on the outer bands of our political ideologies, and yet today and over the weekend, they are at the center of our conversation about our political discourse.
They get magnified.
90% of us are out here saying, neither of these people represent me, yet they're taking up all of our attention. Neither of them represent most people, and neither of them are all that influential, and neither of them are all that effective member of Congress. Yet, they are allowed to define our political discourse, and it's bad.
I agree. Not with the effectiveness stuff. That's, you know, your place to assess it, not mine. But I just feel like one of the reasons, I don't feel it, I know it, one of the reasons they get attention is because they don't get the significant pushback. Yes, the media likes the provocative. Yes, it's clickbait. Yes, people will say, oh, I'm not a fringer, but they'll listen to them. But when the moderates don't stand up and create a bulwark, a backstop, then it only emboldens them. But look, I appreciate you saying it, Scott. I got to be honest. Give yourself more credit. I don't have a lot of Republicans like you dying to come on to say that she's got to shut her mouth and goes always wrong. I don't see it, especially if they are actively in office. So I appreciate you being straight with the audience, and I wish you well.
Well, look, look. Here's what my advice to any Republican member who goes to Congress and has to deal with this is, if you feel compelled to speak out, do it. It's not going to cost you a darn thing to say what everybody's thinking, which is, this is crazy. It is not germane to problem solving in American public affairs right now. And if you feel compelled to say it, absolutely do it. It's not going to cost you anything. There's a better way to have civil political discourse in America, and there's a better way to debate the other side than what this example is. And you shouldn't feel sheepish at all about saying it. That's my advice.